Professor S.K. Mohanty, and dear participants, Namaste and good morning. Welcome to the NICE Economic Lecture Series. Through NICE Economic Lecture Series, we aim to invite eminent economists to discuss the contemporary economic issues at the time when the world is struggling with post-COVID recovery, which has further been hit by the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Before we start, let me briefly introduce NICE. Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement is a research think tank registered under the Companies Act 2006 of Nepal, working towards bringing in research excellence in the field of international relations, international economy, security and development, and looking for better approaches for enhanced international cooperation and relations for a better, peaceful and stable world. To talk about today's important topic, invigorating trade cooperation among regional economies in South Asia, we have a very eminent speaker, Professor S.K. Mohanty. Professor Saroj Kumar Mohanty is serving at the Research and Information System for Developing Countries, RIS, a New Delhi-based think tank supported by the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. He has been working on issues related to trade and development. Recently, he was part of the committees to prepare South Asia's Development Cooperation Report for the SACEPS. He has been associated with research on issues related to regional trade, tariff, manufacturing sector, employment, trade in services, investment, etc. in South Asia. He has directed and coordinated a number of cross-country studies relating to bilateral and regional FTAs, global value chain, implication of mega regional on excluded countries, and food processing industries in Asia. At present, he is leading India's focal point for the IORA academic group. Previously, he was teaching in Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He has published several papers in both national and international journals. He has a number of books to his credit. He has long association with number of multilateral organizations, including Asian Development Bank, UN-ESCAP, UNDP, FAO, European Commissions, Commonwealth Secretariat, SAARC Secretariat, etc. Professor Mohanty, welcome to our program. Professor Mohanty, you have around 35 to 40 minutes to make your initial remarks, which will be followed by the questions and answers. This session is of 60 minutes, and the program is streaming live on several Facebook pages and social media platforms. We would like to request all our participants to tweet about the event and also share our live video on their social media so that maximum can benefit from the discussion. The audience can drop in their questions under the Facebook Live or in Zoom chat. Professor Mohanty, over to you now.
Thank you, Dr. Sunil Chaudhary. It's really nice to be part of this NIC Economic Lecture Series. Your institute stands for NICE. Actually, it is really nice to initiate major issues that the region is confronting today. I will be, let me share my PPT.
Yes, sir, please.
Hope the PPT is now visible.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay. So thank you very much. My topic is invigorating trade cooperation among regional economies in South Asia. The starting point, I would like that at this point of time, the region is again strongly looking for its regional identity. After 37 years of the formation of SAARC, still our region is not taken in a positive manner the way other regions are taken. So it's important that we should really improve the image of South Asia, and we should really work towards the identity of the region. When we look at the positivism that is there in the region, I think most of the literature, what we see about the pessimism about the region, we look at the literature, immediately we refer to World Bank and IMF for literature, where the multilateral organizations describe the region as a poor, poverty-ridden, very poor record of social sector, health sector is very poor. So nothing very positive. Of course, the region has got both positive and negative elements, but in most of the global narrations, you find that the region is always treated negatively, and therefore there is a need for the changing the narration about the region, and we look for the regional identity. Most of the cases, when we look at the literature of World Bank, South Asia is always compared with Sub-Saharan Sahara. The level of poverty, level of nourishment, all kind of social sector and economic. So this is to be seen. In our region, even our government policy corridors, you see, there is nothing in this region. It is 5% interregional trade as compared to very high interregional trade in the neighbors like ASEAN, and also we have not done much in terms of integrating the region. The fact is that the region is growing very fast. All the LDCs have now graduated. Bangladesh is having per capita income at par with India. Maldives has per capita income nearly $11,000. India is going to be the third largest economy in the world by 2030. If these are the achievements, it is not just because of fluke. It is because of the hard realities. If you add the new elements like blue economy, I think the world is with the region. The entire region is more or less exposed to the ocean sector. So I would like to say that the region is expanding and very dominating. Only it can possible through empirical evidences. Throughout my presentation, I will produce empirical evidences to what I am really asking for. Now, the region has got a lofty growth profile. You can see the growth profile of South Asia vis-a-vis some of the major RTAs and continents of the world. And these are all in real GDP format, not in PPP format. Now, the region has robust growth. It is much higher than world, and most of the continents except in Asia during the period 2009. But one can see that during a recession, there could be minor dip. But even the second phase of recession, you can see the purple color, purple color South Asia, which is much above than that of ASEAN, CJK, Europe, Africa, Latin America, we just named them. So that is the strength. And it is not happening for a couple of years. This is happening for the last 30 years. So, and now slowly the region is getting recognition that it is really emerging as a major global region. Now, if we look at the share of the real GDP of the region with the world economy, it is very interesting. You see, South Asia is growing like that of other regions are also growing across the globe. But when the region's share grows, that means the region is growing much faster than the others, and therefore the share of the region is growing. In 2002, it was just 2.4% of world GDP, or they call this world gross world product. Now By 2019, it has reached to 4.1%, of course, minor decline in 2020 because of the pandemic, but the region has grown. And this growth, I associate it with the structural change that is really taking place with the region. And this is very consistent, resilient, and therefore the region would grow. Recently, there are some problems with certain economies, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. I think that they're very temporary in nature. I think they will really tide over such problems. Now, coming to the region vis-a-vis the other continents and major regional groupings, it is a really very strange thing that in most of the regional groupings, South Asia has performed much better than other regional groupings. Look at Asia, the share of South Asia that we have seen that are growing very steadily, but look at MENA, which was much higher than that of the SAARC region, but now it has come below South Asia. Similarly, you can see the share of ASEAN in the world economy, BBIN, PARTA, ECO, GCC, CLMB, you take n number of RTAs, they are much below than that of SAARC. Look at Africa, the same situation that you can see, the intercontinental free trade agreement of 54 countries in Africa, their share is much lower than that of SAARC, and this share declined very sharply or more or less static for AFC FTA for the Africa around 3%, but it is growing very fast. Similar is the case with the Latin America. So everywhere one can see that a rise of South Asia, which is much faster than others. Now, in terms of growth or in terms of size, the South Asian economy is growing. If we combine real GDP of ASEAN and the SICA is a major regional trading group in Central America, even the combined GDP is lower than the SAARC. Similarly, if you add the inter-Africa, CAMEC, and also WAMZ in Africa, even putting them together, it is lower than SAARC. Similarly, GCC, ECOWAS, SHADAC, EAC, and IGAD, put them together, their GDPs, it is still lower than that of GDP of South Asia. So that is the vibrance of this region. And also we have recently tried in RIS so that the growth performance of the region is much higher than that of the world, developed countries, developing countries, and emerging countries. So that this is the performance of South Asia. Now, coming to the growing trade of the region, the trade is very consistently growing over the years. You can see some dip in 2009 because the onset of a recession, and also 2020 because of a pandemic and in between. But if you look at the trajectory, it is growing very steadily over the years. And of course, the region is a deficit region, but its total trade is growing. But interestingly, its service sector is just the opposite. It is more resilient than of the goods sector and growing fast over the years, and also registering a very large trade surplus for the region. And the surplus generated within the region is compensating for the deficit in the goods sector. Now, looking at the always discussion that international trade is very low in the region, 5%, 6%. That means there is the integration process is very, very poor in the region. Is it that? So the empirical evidences that I just wanted to show that many countries are extremely dependent on the region, but both for exports and imports. And for example, some countries are highly dependent to the extent of 65 to 90% of their trade with the region. Is it that they're less dependent on the region? For example, in case of imports, Bhutan and Nepal are depending on the region to the extent of 64 to 85%. And for their exports, depending upon 73 to 98%, such as Bhutan, Afghanistan, Nepal. Some countries are moderately dependent. That means 8 to 20%. In imports, countries like Sri Lanka, Maldives, Bangladesh, they're depending upon the region to the extent of 16 to 20%. And also exports to the extent of 8 to 10% for countries like Sri Lanka, Pakistan. And look at India, 75% of regional trade exports is again handled by India, and nearly 13% of regions import by India in 2020. Now, look at the example I have put, that is intra-regional trade marred by extra-regional trade. That means, are we going out of the region? Therefore, the intra-regional is true. So how different regions are integrated with South Asia, that I have tried to show, taking data from 2002 to 2020, and imports and exports separately. So it looks slightly jittery, but one can see that the green bar is showing out of 100 how much the country is dependent on the region, and the golden color showing that how the region is dependent, the country is dependent on the extra-regional trade. So looking at this, there is no stylized facts. We have taken 8 countries, and we have got 4 different patterns. Some countries are highly dependent both for exports and imports, like Bhutan and Nepal. Some countries are highly dependent on exports, not very less on imports, like Afghanistan. Some countries are moderately dependent on imports on the region, and less on exports, like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives. Some countries are moderately dependent on exports and imports, like India and Pakistan. So looking at this scenario, it is clearly indicative of the fact that there are leakages taking place within the regional trade, and therefore the international trade can be improved to a very large extent, that one can see. Now, if we look at intra-regional trade, I think it is always debated that intra-regional trade is 5%, 5 to 6% in the region. But if we look at since 1963 to 2020, even the region, when it was not formed, it was formed in 1985. But if you look at the region performed in the past, and region has performed in recent years, and there is enough of space to improve in inter-regional trade. You can see the regime between 1965, 1971, where the region passed through very traumatic phase. India-Pakistan war in 1965, 1971. But you can see in 1973, it was the peak inter-regional trade of 6.1%. So quick it really took. Look at in the recent years, in 2004, another peak, when the region, the SAARC was formed in 1985. From 1989, it started increasing. One can see at one point of time, inter-regional trade was only 2.6%. So after 2004, when again reached 6.1%, the region never saw that glory again. I hope that in the coming years, again, the region would go, it would repeat itself. I would like to say that in just 3 years, between 2003, 2006, inter-regional trade was doubled. And it is again a very important achievement of the region. I think in the coming years, it can really grow. Now, if you want to increase international trade, where is the avenue? So we have again split the trade sector into three broad sectors: agriculture, manufacturing, and minerals. And you can see the steady growth of international trade between 2003 to 2020. But if you look at agriculture, and then you see that international trade in agriculture is much higher than that of the manufacturing and the minerals. Manufacturing is coming at the second stage. And in the agriculture sector, it is reaching more than 9%. And with the recession in place for the last 15 years, the international trade has gone down in case of agriculture, but it is still quite robust as compared to the overall international trade of the region or the manufacturing or the minerals sector. Now, again, in the agriculture sector, which sectors are to be subsectors to be focused? Again, we saw international trade in different subsectors within the agriculture. We found that the fruits and vegetables and prepared food are these two sectors where the international trade is in double digits. Sometimes it is even more than 20%. So I think that we can really restructure our policies within the region. How to do it, that's a different thing. But looking at the political situation of the region, I think liberalization process should start either voluntarily or informally, the way it is done in case of APEC. But definitely, it would be quite beneficial for the region. I would like to say that over the years, the trade destinations of the region has really changed a lot. I have tried to show for 8 countries for both exports and imports how the partners have changed. The upper one, the left side is showing that the top 5 importers of different countries in 2003, and the right hand side it is 2020. The upper 2 square showing about the imports, and the lower 2 showing about the imports. What is emerging from this is that trade destination has changed enormously, and it is more with the imports than the exports. Among the top importers and exporters, they are mostly outsiders, not within the region. And if we look at the top 5 exporters, that means South Asian countries exporting to the region, it is 4 in case of India, where it is among the top 4 countries, and China only in case of 3. That means the China is importing less from the region, but it become number 1 exporter to all the countries in the region. Now, the question is that, as I said, that the region is a trade deficit region. How the trade deficit was there over the years? I have just tried to show from 2002 to 2020, what is the extent of trade deficit of different countries within the region. One can see that in most of the cases during buoyancy between 2002 to 2007, only Bhutan had trade deficit, which is represented by the bubble. The bigger the size of the bubble, it shows that the size of deficit is large. But you can see in almost all the countries during the period of recession, the deficit situation got aggravated. Even India faced such difficulties twice during the period of recession. Now, the issue is that how to deal with the issue of trade deficit. Many times we accuse that whether bilateral trade deficit is really very detrimental to the interest of a country. my simple argument is no. If bilateral trade deficit is contributing in terms of reducing overall trade deficit of the region because of the competitive inputs from a bilateral partner, I don't think it is bad. But definitely, if the bilateral import is not competitive, definitely it is a matter of concern. Now I try to see that how the region is importing from the rest of the world and how much import is being compensated by the by countries' imports. I think countries like Afghanistan, Maldives, and Nepal, they are in a difficult situation where their exports are not really taking care of its imports from the rest of the world. For other countries, it is okay, but for these countries, it is a bit difficult situation. And these countries can also can see with their trade linkages with the other individual countries. Now, if you look at the trade is again a composite of several elements. I think if you look at the global trade, 60 to 80% of global trade is part of global value chain. And in global value chain, it is the parts and components which is the major component of global value chain. It would be difficult to say that a whole product, the finished product, is emanating from a country. It is very difficult to say that something is made in Nepal or made in Bangladesh, because for the best products, you should also have the best inputs, and therefore you get inputs very spike in the prices. So, and also another important aspect is in the global value chain sector, it is becoming more technology intensive. So if we produce more of values, global value chain products, it should be more technology intensive in a character. So what we have seen in South Asia, the value chain sector is very poor, that we can see from the graph. You can see that the share of international trade in the total international trade is much above the total one in the intermediate segment, and the international trade is represented by the blue graph. And that is also very the same with the primary sector, but definitely not in parts and components. That means we are lagging far behind our neighbors in the parts and components, but we are very strong in semi-processed goods within the intermediate sector. Now, coming to the technology, what I mentioned about technology, that in any product, how much of technology embedded is the basis of classification. So that way, like, one can see that a product can be treated as a technology intensive product or a primary product. Since 1987, one can see the evolution of identifying products on the basis of its technology intensity. In 1987, Pilbit, then OECD 95, Sanjay Lal in 2002. I also contributed in 2002. So primarily it is showing that the 5 to 10 sectors, if you take the 5 sectors, in the 5 sectors, 3 sectors could be technology intensive. It could be low technology, medium technology, and high technology. Globally, I see medium and high technology constituting nearly 60% of global trade. So trade driven, technology driven trade would be the driver of growth, and the region has to adopt it. And possibly here showing that how much of import and exports that is taking place within the region by different countries in terms of high technology and medium technology shown in the graph. India is showing that it is exporting huge amount of high and medium technologies to the regional economies, also importing nearly 5% from the region in terms of high and medium technologies. Other countries important are Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and now Nepal. So I think if we want to really thrive in the trade sector, we should also really focus on technology intensive of intermediate products, particularly value chain. Now, when we talk about raising trade, it is also simultaneously you have to liberalize. You can see between 2003 to 2007, which is the period of buoyancy in the global economy, the region has really strongly into liberalization. From 18.9%, it straightway went down to 6.5% as import-weighted tariff for the region. And that rapid liberalization really helped the region in terms of accessing global market and integrating itself with the global market. And that process is almost for the last 30 years within the regions. Now, during the period of recession since 2007, now you find the stagnancy in terms of liberalization. I think the line is more or less flat between 6.5% to 8%, not very strong liberalization. Even in recent years, that we can see that the reversal of the tariff policies as a response to the world economy, most of the countries followed very inward-oriented strategies. American started as buy American policies. Similarly, to give response, many countries started having raising the tariff, but definitely it is very short term and not very significant increase in the tariff rates. But in agriculture, if you look at different segments, it is quite liberal in minerals and manufacturing, but it is very highly volatile and protected in agriculture because large population of our countries dependent on the agriculture sector. Though Pakistan is also part of the Cranes group, which is in favor of rapid liberalization in the region. Now, as I said earlier, the trade in services, which is very important for the region because this particular sector is not only resilient as compared to trade in goods, but the composition is really growing very fast. For example, goods increased in the GDP of the region increased from 32% in 2003 to nearly 35% in 2020. But in services sector, it increased from almost 8% to nearly 10.5% in 2020. It is very remarkable rise. Similarly, if you look at the region's exports, it is nearly 217 billions in 2020 in terms of exports. In terms of imports, it is around $135 billion in 2030. It is quite substantial. It is quite substantial because the region is thriving in trade and also generating huge trade surplus in trade in services. So many countries have started increasingly having large consumption of services. And India has taken the lead in this sector, but other countries are also having a huge consumption of services sector. Now, coming to the question of foreign direct investment, it is quite lucrative during the period of buoyancy that one can see both the green showing outward FDI of the region and the purple, the red color showing about inward FDI. But during buoyancy, you can see there is a surge of the inward FDI for the region. It was between 2 to 3% of the region's GDP. It's quite substantial. But with the recession, it really diminished both in terms of outward FDI of the region and also inward FDI. But in recent years, particularly in the second phase of recession, 2013 till now, the inward recession, inward FDI is on its rise. So now, looking at the bilateral tariff FDI, one can see that I have taken for 6 countries. For other countries, I could get that information. But one thing is very simple, interesting is that inward FDI is rising, but during the second phase of recession, it is below 2% of its GDP in total, and maximum investment is in the greenfield segment. India is a major investor in the region, but not fully adjusted its potential in comparison its performance with the rest of the world. But it is investing in Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Bhutan. Similarly, India is also receiving investment from the regional partners like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, like that. Similarly, in Bangladesh also invested in many countries like Pakistan, India, like that. Sri Lanka is also investing in many countries. So, looking at the investment part is really picking up within the region, and regional economies are strongly engaged into the process. Now, the last but one presentation. Okay, then what is the potential, trade potential of the region? We have taken trade creating effects using Wiener's trade creation effects. So if we see that there is a huge unexploited potential within the region, if we estimated for all the regional economies, all 8 countries by sector, it is clearly indicating that the largest gain would be for Bangladesh, and the least would be for Maldives. In case of a potential $1 billion, Bangladesh is expected to get $7.1 billion in a year. Sri Lanka 5.9 billion, India 2.7 billion, Nepal 1.8 billion, Bhutan 1.2 billion, and others less than $1 billion per annum. So that is the extent of, and the broad important sectors could be the minerals, base metal, and machinery, and other sectors both in agriculture and the manufacturing sector include fruits and vegetables, processed food, chemicals, wood pulps, textiles and clothing, automobiles, and precision instruments. These are the broad sectors. So I would like to say that we very strongly in need of our regional identity. If people take our name with some kind of respect, then definitely we'll get huge foreign direct investment the way ASEAN is getting, or it is Mercosur is getting, or Pacific Alliance in Latin America, and many other very emerging regional groupings getting huge investment. We have to really change the narration of the region, that it is vibrant, economically feasible, expanding, and there is close coordination between countries within the region. You have to change the narration, not only economic narration, also political, social, and other sectors. My second point is that the moment we could manage that, we'll have very strong spillover effects in terms of FDI. People will definitely depend upon the country for very high-skilled, white-collared labor, which can really give us a huge dividend for the country in terms of remittances. We should also focus on value chain. So we'll continue to have our share globally, both in terms of GDP, in terms of income, and also the trade. And that would really give boost to our international trade to a very large extent. To begin with, we should focus on agriculture, but definitely our ultimate aim would be the manufacturing integration within the region. To start with, we should focus more within the agriculture, the processed food and fruits and vegetables, which have got a very large potential. Trade in services and investment should also be pushed, and by developing with congenial environment within the region, I'm sure that we can mobilize huge resources investment within the region. So we have to start with the second generation reforms within the region, with the manufacturing at the lead, particularly focusing on global value chain, technology intensive sectors. My strong urge for the regional research community that we should really work intensively to build literature around the region as a vibrant region. It can be compared with any region across the globe. We have got a very strong record of 30 years of strong growth profile. We have really expanded our positions in the world economy for trade, investment, trade in services. But apart from all that, we have not really gained name for ourselves. It is the biggest tragedy for us, and therefore we have to now rewrite the literature, the narration about the region as a vibrant region. With this, let me conclude. I'll accept questions now. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Mohanty, for the comprehensive and interesting presentation on invigorating trade cooperation among regional economies in South Asia. We learned a lot, and we have received some questions here through the chat and through Facebook Live. So let me present some questions. The question is like, since India and China are both emerging economies, but China has greater share in GVC, that global value chain and international trade, what could be the reason that India is lagging behind in GVC and international trade compared to China?
Any other? Should I take a couple of questions? Or
yeah, okay. We can have 2-3 questions at once. And in your opinion, what are the areas where South Asian countries should focus for regional cooperation and trade, despite of that SAFTA and SAPTA, the potentiality that we have that is not fully achieved, it seems. So we can let's do these questions and then we'll put forward other questions as well.
Very, very nice and interesting questions. Of course, the first question, India is not China. The polity, the systems, they're completely different. And but definitely, we have developed our own model to do it, and China has got a different model. So one is to see that how best we can really focus on our own strength in terms of improving our growth performance. For example, I would like to say that India, as I said in my presentation, it is expected by 2030, India would be the third largest economy in the world, and it would grow. It can only grow if the region is growing yes. with the country, and we also expand in different areas. Now, one question: that why India really didn't do much in GVC. Is it that it is lacking to a very large extent? I fully agree on the point that the penetration of industrial sector or the manufacturing sector in India is much lower than that of China. I fully agree. It is 17% or so. It is quite large in case of China. But I did a study. Of course, it is there in the website. One can refer. India, China, for the Reserve Bank of India, RBI website. The paper is there. Also in RI's website is there. One can see. There, the Chinese model is that China is good in assembly. So taking all inputs for good product, you need good inputs. Inputs used to come from ASEAN countries. And through ASEAN countries, they export it to China, and the major assembly line is in China. Now the question is that as ASEAN countries are exporting to China, what is the relationship between India and ASEAN countries in terms of supplying to China? So in the study, I showed that with the major old ASEAN countries like Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines, others, I tried to compare them at the product level, the competitiveness. And I could show that in several product lines, India is a better competitor than the old ASEAN countries. But it is a question of sourcing. If the Chinese importing authorities decided to import from ASEAN countries, not beyond ASEAN countries, nothing can be done. So the process is very much there. We're into high-tech sectors. Recently, we have introduced a new sector, and we are working very hard on the semiconductor industry, which is a very strong industry in the electronics sector. And possibly over the years, we can do better in this area. People say, the second question that people say, SAFTA is a failure. South Asian Free Trade Agreement is a failure. I don't see. I think I failed to show quantitatively. Between 2003 to 2006, South Asia's trade, international trade, doubled. So no other region in the world achieved this distinction that international trade just doubled in 3 years. So, but the fact is that we couldn't really maintain that. Sometimes political, sometimes this, that. We are into. Now the question is that cannot we settle our political differences? In a family, we just tell us, in a family, we have our own differences with our brothers or our sisters. We can't do it. If in my one of my recent papers, I mentioned that if UK and France compromise on their 100 years of war, and in ASEAN, in the 80s, they got a series of wars among themselves. They could manage with vibrance. Can you not maintain that? I think there is a change the regime. I think the new developments, new government in Pakistan, new thinking in Sri Lanka, similar thinking in Nepal. I think they tend to think that whatever we do, we can do anything, but we cannot change our neighbors. And when our neighbors are prospering, we should also take advantage of that. And we really dismantle the mindset that we had in the past. Now we really enter to a new phase of economic cooperation. We can really work together. Thank you. Next question.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Mohanty, for the interesting answers. It's very knowledgeable. Some other questions are here. Do you think BIMSTEC will be able to overcome the hurdles faced by SAARC Or how do you look at the trade potential under the BIMSTEC framework? That's the one question. Another is, one of the major reasons for the lack of regional trade is connectivity. South Asia is less integrated than in the past. Do you think regional economic integration is possible without connectivity? And let's put another question. What are the major barriers to trade and regional cooperation in South Asia, and how the South Asian nations can overcome it? Has opting for BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, helped the South Asian nations in this regard? So let's first discuss these three questions, then we'll see some questions.
They're also quite interesting. BIMSTEC, if I support one son, that doesn't mean that the other son would not progress. So BIMSTEC and SAARC, they are not very different, only different arrangements. SAARC started in 1985 and BIMSTEC started in 1997, like IORA. So they do not compete. So in their own way, what developments, there is no preferential trading arrangement in BIMSTEC, no free trade agreement in BIMSTEC. South Asia or SAARC is much ahead than that of BIMSTEC. So there is absolutely no comparison. It is a kind of a different arrangement. So I don't think BIMSTEC could be a kind of hurdle for South Asia. We have got our own institutions we have built. Only thing that we could maintain it, and therefore it crumbled. Now BIMSTEC is struggling to have its free trade agreement, but we did it in 2003. So there is no match between South Asia. South Asia is much ahead of SAARC, and definitely if you build it, I think we can do progress. Progress of SAARC or BIMSTEC cannot be a kind of hurdle for the other one. So that's my reaction. They should go independently. The second issue is about connectivity. I fully agree with the suggestion that without connectivity, nothing can happen. The major barrier for GBC is connectivity. When you go for fragmentation of a production in a different production block, they are to be linked through services. So that service link has to be there through connectivity. So it could be soft connectivity, it could be hard connectivity, digital connectivity, this and that. All those things are under RIS initiated, India initiated a program known as Asia Africa Growth Corridor, AAGC. So there also we talked about high quality connectivity within the region. So there are studies done in RIS, by ADB and others, that how best we can really improve the connectivity within the region, and that could really facilitate trade among ourselves. One interesting observation I have seen, that till the 2010, the trade was mostly India-centric. Countries are mostly trading with India, and India was at the center. But recently, what I've seen, very interesting, is that regional economies are trading among themselves, and that is thriving. So for that, in order to always go through India, but that connectivity link has to be there to connect other countries within the region, to ensure that the trade is taking place between different partners through India. So that is one, I think India is also very serious about it, and we should really focus on that. There are huge trade barriers. I think we look at the literature by our own people within the region. I think we have listed a lot. So I think pages after pages we can write when you talk about barriers. So I need not to focus on that. But I will definitely focus on the other part of BRI. So Belt and Road Initiative, of course, I have written recently on this, that, as I said, that as long as anything, whether it is trade or investment, helping the country, there should not be any problem at all. It should be transparent, it should be predictable, and it should be democratic in its nature. So we have got nothing to do with BRI, but the fact is that you have seen that more than 170, 180 countries are part of BRI. And also you can see the experiences of different countries. I don't want to cite the example of Sri Lanka or Pakistan that we know all within the region. But in other countries, those who have tried to negotiate with China on BRI, particularly Mahathir Mohamad in Malaysia, that the trans railway track, the project has to be abrogated because it is not feasible. And then when he came to power for the second time, renegotiated the project, reduced the size of the project, and also the payment system was cleared. So now, and China also succumbed to that thing and also tried to reduce the payment system, which was comfortable for Malaysia. The same policy also adopted by the military junta of Thailand. They also negotiated for the railway track, and also they could succeed partially. But Pakistan also tried the same thing. When Imran Khan came as a prime minister, he also tried. But China, its own way, tried its best. You know, the rest I do not want to say in this platform. But Pakistan did its best to reduce the cost component of it and to make it more transparent, but couldn't succeed. Similarly is the case with the Maldives, where India had to bail out Maldives to redeem the debt that it really took from China. So the crux is that also in many firms I used to argue that instead of following bilateral investment arrangement, which has got the downside risk of severity, one should go for the multilateral or institutional arrangements, where the investment, the element of risk, they're all predictable. So countries should not. Now Bangladesh is also going in a very big way. They are also very careful after looking at the situation in Pakistan and Sri Lanka, Maldives, but they're a bit careful, but they're also going in a very massive way when you have a very huge shortage of investment, when you want to have very rapid growth, and for rapid growth, you need investment. But one should only choose the path that from where it should come, and not the way the others have into serious difficulties.
Thank you, Professor. Now we will come to the end. Let me put the final questions. There is one question. India has huge trade with China. Does it mean that India is giving more emphasis to China, trade with China, than the South Asian region? And the another is, what could be the areas where that India should concern to improve its global value chains in international trade? So this will be our final questions.
This is also a very interesting question, that India as a big country, lower middle income country, its import requirements are quite substantial. And as we know, when a country grows, the middle income group is extremely vocal. And they, since they have got the purchasing power, if they don't get the desired product, they can either source from the domestic economy if quality is maintained, or they can source from the rest of the world. Now, since country is very large and the demand is very large, India's import is $400 billion, more than $400 billion. You take even the largest economy in the region, Bangladesh, in trade, nearly $40 billion. So India's requirements cannot be met through the imports from the region. That doesn't mean that South Asia is neglected. It is the requirement of any country. For example, Bangladesh, why Bangladesh is not exporting to India? Because the products they produce at home, garments, the major exporting item, they find a suitable market in Europe and US. It is more profitable, and therefore they're choosing their market. We can't say that why don't you export it to India? So like that, there are several compulsions for different countries. Of course, what we have done, that is not the perfect one, that I don't claim it. In a recent paper we have done, where it is coming out soon, that whether the import that we are making from China, is that competitive? Or we are doing justice? The way I said that bilateral deficit is not important for a country. If it is really reducing your overall trade deficit, it is always good if it is competitive. But if we found that for large number of commodities, it's not competitive. There are existing suppliers who are more competitive than China. But then why are you going to China? We are going to China because of this scale factor. When India goes to the international market for urea import, prices would go up from $30 to $130 because of the size of import, the size of demand. It is like that. So now, through our own policies, self-reliance policy, which we call it as Atmanirbhar, through which we are also seeing that how best we can reduce this $60 billion trade deficit with China. So we are conscious of that and also doing, but definitely it is not at the cost of South Asia. South Asia would be very, we are doing very much with this, the region. We have got a duty-free, quota-free system for the LDCs. Nearly 98.2% of their imports can come to India without any tariff, zero tariff. So if India is against South Asian countries, it could not have done that. We are also seriously engaged with other non-LDC economies. Even with Maldives, after their graduation, we have also extended the benefit which we extended to other LDCs. So definitely India is not against South Asia, and India cannot exist without South Asia.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Mohanty. It was insightful and very great sessions, and it was our honor to have you with us. Thank you very much. And we would like to thank our participants, audience, for their wonderful questions and participations. We will have some questions in in the next session. We have other with India and global value chain at 3 p.m. So I wish our participants will join there. Thank you very much, Professor Mohanty. It was a great pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much. It was indeed a great pleasure to interact with the South Asian participants, researchers. If what more questions, I think you can share with me, and I can definitely reply to those queries. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you all.